and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about BTS's live performance at the Melon Music Award 2019, focusing on the breakdown and analysis of the performance and on the possible hints it may be hiding about the upcoming comeback. Since it was getting far too long, I've decided to split my analysis in two. So let's begin with part 1 and see what's going on. Now this year, BTS gave us quite an impressive performance, which is not surprising at all really, if not for the fact that they chose to perform a lot of songs from the past. Right off the bat, this is very strange, because the title of the performance is Map of the Soul, the show. This alone got me thinking right away. Granted, they performed Persona, Boy With Love, Microcosmos and Dionysus, which are all part of the Map of the Soul. But what about the others? Well, ever since intro Persona came out, there have been a lot of hints that suggested they were going back in time. The intro of Persona was sampled off the intro of School Love Affair, and Boy With Love is a sequel of Souls to Boy in Love. Since then, there have been some other hints that the Map of the Soul series is kinda mirroring the previous eras and the story that comes with them. But what does it all mean? How can it be all part of the Map of the Soul if Map of the Soul was their most recent work? Well, in order to answer all these questions, we need to start from the beginning. In the VCR that introduced the performance, we see the boys sleeping as their shadows walk around. Right off the bat, this is a major clue about the comeback, because it basically confirms that it's gonna be dealing with the shadow concept. The shadow is the repressed part of our unconscious that comes to the surface when we dream, so it makes sense that it's free when they are sleeping. Namjoon here is the first one to wake up, and when he does, he starts to play with a lighter. Now the fire here is a very interesting choice, because its presence kicks off the performance. But why? Well, in his theories, Jung talks about the gift of creative fire, which is basically what possesses an artist when they create something. According to Jung, this gift is a very difficult one to deal with, because fire also represents the overwhelming passion one has to overcome in order to control it. If you go through the inferno of your passions, as Jung called it, then you are able to overcome them. But if you don't, then the fire will always be a threat to you. An artist is able to overcome his personal inferno by expressing himself through art. That is, by turning the dangerous fire into a medium of creation. And this is exactly what I think is happening in the video. Right after Aram uses the lighter, the Map of the Soul show begins, because he is controlling the fire and he is now able to use it to express himself freely. The Map of the Soul show here shows us that the journey to master this fire has begun a very long time ago, and this is one of the reasons why there are so many callbacks to their previous works. But before getting there, let's take a look at Persona. Now, Persona is not the beginning of the journey, because as we see in the performance, BTS's journey started with No More Dream going forward. Persona, however, can be seen as the beginning of them acknowledging this journey. It's them coming to terms with who they are as people and as idols, who they are for us, but most importantly, who they are for themselves. As I mentioned in some of my past videos, the goal of the Map of the Soul is to achieve self-improvement by going through a process of self-awareness. It's about accepting the persona and the shadow and achieving balance through the ego in order to have a healthy self. This is a journey whose goal is to teach us to heal ourselves and become better individuals. And the first step is to accept that the persona, that is the part of ourselves that we want to show, is indeed a part of us, but not something that defines us completely. Persona is basically Aram's answer to the question, who am I? But also a song that is meant to push us to ask ourselves the same question. Who are you as a person? Are you what people think you are? Are you what happened to you? Are you just a persona, a character? Well, of course not, and the writings on the blackboard reinforce this idea as well. If we take a closer look at it, we can see some of the lyrics of the song and the words persona, shadow and ego constantly repeating. But there are also two important clues that can help us understand what they are going for here. The first clue is this sentence right here: I am not what happened to me. Now this alone is super important because it speaks volumes about what BTS wants you to understand, especially if you have some bad experience in your life that you need to overcome. This sentence implies that you are not what life has turned you into, that you are not your trauma, that you are not necessarily the person people think you are, even if sometimes it's all too easy identifying with it. In the context of the storyline, this is important as well, because the characters they play have experiences that are mostly negative. These experiences take a toll on them to the point that in the story they drift apart and get lost in the problems of their life. But they are not their problems, just like you are not yours. If you are going back in time in the next comeback, this could also mean that we are going to see an alternative versions of their life starting from the time where they were together in school. The Boy in Love performance seems to confirm this as well, but before getting there, let's take a look at the second clue. Now, if we look at the blackboard, there is a sentence that is written constantly, but it's quite difficult to make out. This sentence is actually the beginning of a quote from our old friend Carl Jung, and this is the complete version of it. The dream is a small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul, which opens to that primeval cosmic night that was soul long before was conscious ego, and will be soul far beyond what a conscious ego could ever reach. Now, I know what you're thinking. What? Let me break it down for you. Jung here is saying that dreams are little doors to the soul, meaning that when we dream, we get an honest look at who we really are behind our mask. As we see in the VCR, when we dream, the shadow takes over. And this is not negative per se, but it's chaotic because the shadow represents the primitive side of ourselves. We repress it because it's difficult to deal with it on a daily basis, and this is so because inside of us we have a microcosmos, which means that we contain a small replica of the universe that we all share. This is very overwhelming to think about, so our mind helps us by repressing the shadow. When we dream, however, we get a little sneak peek of who we truly are. Our soul is as ancient as the universe itself. We have existed before and will continue to exist after. We are eternal and beautiful, and we are all connected because our souls are all part of the same thing. As we'll see in a second, this concept is central to microcosmos, but what does it have to do with persona? Well, by asking who am I, persona cracks open the little door we access when we dream. It's a ram consciously making the effort to define himself after his self-awakening. This process implies change, and this change is perfectly conveyed in the Boy in Love, Boy with Love performance. Now, this performance has a double meaning, I think. On the one hand, it proves that we are indeed going back to the time where this journey was actually beginning, possibly showing us an alternative reality where the boys will live a completely different set of experiences. But on the other, it also shows us how self-awareness can affect our perception. In Boy in Love, the boys were young and completely overpowered by love. They were its victims, they obsessed over it, and wanted to conquer the passion they had inside of them. But in Boy with Love, we see them actually embracing the love they were trying to control. Now it's all different. Love is not an enemy anymore, it's an ally, a superpower even, that they use to benefit us and themselves. This idea is also reinforced in the introduction to Microcosmos. The intro here says that even if they tried their best, at the beginning they didn't shine as bright. But then you guys found each other and they realized that they were part of something bigger. Once again, the focus is on self-awareness. It's about understanding your worth and how your light can positively affect the world around you as well as yourself. Microcosmos is a very positive song. It's about love and light, and I made a whole video about it that you can check out in case you missed it. But in this case, I think it's important to focus on the planet that looms over them as they sing the song. Now, including Saturn could very well be an aesthetic choice on their part, especially since we also see other two planets or satellites orbiting around. But since Saturn is very easily recognizable and BTS never shows anything unless they want to, this choice got me thinking, and it turns out that Saturn is quite significant in Jung's theories. Now, since in Roman mythology Saturn is the equivalent of Kronos, and Kronos is his children in the Greek creation myth, Saturn is quite understandably an ambivalent figure. On the one hand, he represents the creative power. He represents masculinity and procreation, that fire and that passion that we were mentioning earlier. But on the other, he also represents the repression of this creation. If we consider Saturn the planet, moreover, Saturn is the last one that we are able to see with the naked eye. And this is important because this idea transforms Saturn into a symbol of the limits of our consciousness. That is the point where the persona meets the shadow. Bear in mind, at this point, we are in the middle of the performance. In the first half, we saw the boys coming to terms with the persona and becoming self-aware about their past and their growth. But now we are gradually shifting towards the shadow, which is a concept that is perfectly introduced in both the solo stages and Dionysus. This, however, will be the topic of part 2. It's coming very soon, guys. I promise it will be worth the wait. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you super soon, I promise. Bye bye!